Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by Fred and Lou Hartwig and viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly, and our topics this week: the plaza in transition, possible transition in the Kansas Democratic Party, and a conservative columnist explains James Madison to Donald Trump and Ben Carson, plus roast and toast. But we start with our interview segment and visit with the former Kansas City, Missouri Mayor Kay Barnes. After stints on the county legislature and the city council, Ms. Barnes ran successfully for mayor in 1999, re-elected in 2003. While some of her predecessors talked of downtown redevelopment, it was during her administration that the progress so visible today was begun. Sprint Center, the Power and Light District, apartment construction, just to name the obvious. We thought it would be interesting to get her perspective on how downtown is doing now and what she thinks the future holds for downtown and the metro area. We are pleased indeed to welcome to Ruckus former Kansas City Mayor Kay Barnes. Mayor Barnes, welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
Has downtown lived up to what you expected it to be? Is it more than you anticipated? Is it less than you anticipated?
It is as much or more. Certainly, I had, along with many others, a vision of what downtown could become, and I think in many ways that is occurring.
Let me ask you about that. You get a lot of credit, and deservedly so, for the changes downtown, but who else deserves credit for what change has taken place?
Well, the stars really aligned when I was in office, and I'm thinking of organizations such as the Greater Kansas City Sports Commission that had commissioned a study on whether a new arena could be viable without an NBA or NHL franchise, the Civic Council, the National Association of Basketball Coaches, H&R Block, Sprint, and many, many individuals who worked with me and the City Council. I think we had a terrific city manager at that time in Wayne Cawthon, who brought a wealth of experience to what we were doing in Kansas City from his leadership role in Denver.
Are you disappointed there's no major league sports team anchored at the Sprint Center?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it because particularly with the NBA, I would be there for every game. On the other hand, the Sprint Center, as I think you know, is one of the most successful arenas, not only in this country, but literally around the world. So we're doing great.
We have the Power and Light District, and it does not generate enough sales tax to pay the interest on its bonds, and that's a problem because it takes money from the general fund. Did you anticipate that problem when you helped develop the Power and Light District?
I didn't anticipate it, although I am not as distressed by the reality as some are, because I view what the entertainment district is all about as an investment, and you look at all of the new development and redevelopment around it, crossroads and so on, which I am not sure would have occurred had it not been for the Power and Light District.
It's a catalyst for other things developing?
Very much so.
Let's take a look at a picture your friend and mine, Steve Glorioso, sent me when he found out you were going to be on the program. It's a picture taken in 2002, and I think it's on Main Street facing toward what is now the Sprint Center and H&R Block building. It's a different view of downtown.
Yes, it certainly is, and I had the same view outside my window in the mayor's office at City Hall, and it was great to be able to look outside and look at literally the Sprint Center coming up out of the ground.
There's a lot of debate going on now with the City Council and elsewhere in the community about the idea of a new convention hotel downtown and what the city's involvement should be. How essential do you think a new downtown convention hotel is to the future of downtown?
I think it is essential. I have always been supportive of the concept, and I'm delighted that after much hard work, study, thought, we now have a definite plan, and I very much hope it will move forward.
We're about to see in a few months, we anticipate, 2-mile-long streetcar track and 4 streetcars running back and forth from Crown Center down to the River Market area. Is that an important change for downtown?
I think it also is an important change, and even more perhaps than providing a mode of transportation is the economic development occurring around it, which is what happens in virtually every city when they put in either light rail or a streetcar system. We are seeing ample evidence of that, and that's one of the great benefits of having it.
Since you left office in 2007, you ran, not successfully, for the U.S. Congress. What do you do now to keep busy?
I am a professor in the Graduate School for Public Affairs at Park University. I teach a course on leadership and also have the pleasure of serving on a variety of community boards and foundations, which I really enjoy.
Well, there's a committee in existence that wants to develop some sort of way to pay tribute to you in Kansas City for your work as mayor, and Yael Abahaka wrote a column about it a couple of weeks ago, said you didn't respond to his inquiry about what would you like. So let me ask you, what would you like to have dedicated to you in downtown Kansas City or elsewhere?
Well, I appreciate the thought. I really do. I'm not someone who looks for that level of recognition. So if something comes to fruition, that will be great. And yet I certainly don't expect it.
Power and Barnes District?
I don't think that's going to work.
Barnes Center?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you very much for coming in. Pleasure to see you again.
Good to see you.
That's former Kansas City, Missouri Mayor Kay Barnes. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Steve Rose is a Kansas City Star columnist and Johnson County civic leader. Gwen Grant is president and CEO of the Urban League in Kansas City. Lisa Johnston is a political consultant and columnist. And Patrick Tuohy is with the Show Me Institute, a libertarian think tank. Before we get started, I want to welcome our studio audience today. We have some folks with us who are members of the KCPT Producers Society. They support KCPT financially and in other ways. Thank you for coming by. I hope you enjoy the program. Give yourselves a big round of applause. Show that you're functioning there. All right, while the downtown area is growing and developing, there may be even more focus now on the fabled Country Club Plaza, an enduring landmark in Kansas City history and culture. For the second time in its 92-year history, it's being sold. Founded by the Nichols Company in 1923, it remained under Nichols ownership until 1998, when the plaza was purchased by Highwoods Properties. Now Highwoods is putting the plaza on the market, and speculation about the icon's future is shifting into high gear. So let's add to that speculation. What are some of the concerns you're hearing, Gwen?
Well, I think, well, actually, I haven't heard a whole lot of concerns. I think people really don't know what to expect, so I reached out to some of my colleagues in the economic development community, and basically the concerns are, we expect that Highwoods would exercise good stewardship in this sale, and that people, those who would consider purchasing the property, would do their due diligence and know that coming into Kansas City there will be certain expectations, such as maintaining the architectural integrity of the plaza. And when Highwoods tried to change that, they hit a brick wall, and I think that may have also played some role in their deciding to go ahead and sell the property, because they are an entity that's into high-rise office buildings. So folks also want to see maybe more return to more local merchants and local restaurants, as opposed to some of the national, a lot of the national.
But apparently
chains.
That's not going to happen.
Probably not. You know what I miss about the plaza is the anchor department store Halls moved. Don't know why that happened, and I think that the plaza has lost its shopping flavor. It's not so much a shopping destination. You've got a lot of little small shops, but not really any really great specialty boutiques out there. So I think, hopefully when they make the change, they'll make a few improvements. But Highwoods has done a great job in maintaining it. And whoever buys the property, we hope would continue the Plaza Art
But there's
Fair.
no way to guarantee those things,
You can't guarantee that. Well, you have some
contractually,
ways of,
perhaps?
Not, contractually, they may be, but I think the key is zoning laws and codes that the city has.
And apparently a new Midtown Plaza
stopgap.
plan is being developed by City Hall, and that may have some impact.
Yeah.
Steve, you've lived in Kansas City all your life.
Yes.
Have you not?
I have.
All 43 years. And I'm sure you traveled to the plaza many times. What's the difference now at the plaza between when you were a child and now as an adult?
Well, as a child, of course, it was a completely different mix of retailers. You had a bowling alley, you had Sears, you had, it was a.
My wife's always upset because the local merchants seem to have.
Well, that's what I was going to go to. I think that we all miss that. The economics dictate who's going to be there. And I don't think whether it's the new owners are retailers or people who are, maybe concentrated more in office or anything else, that anyone can stop the momentum of the chains coming in and taking over the spaces where the little ma and pa local stores were. I think there's not a person in the city who doesn't miss the local flavor that the plaza used to have.
I thought it was interesting, Patrick, that somebody at Highwood said more than 40% of the shoppers who come to the plaza come from out of town, outside the metro Kansas City area.
Well, I believe that, and I've only been in Kansas City for 10 years, so I can't speak to what the plaza once was. But I think when you compare what the plaza is today to alternatives, you look at, and it's not an exact alternative, but you look at the Power and Light District, there's a power station in Baltimore, there's a similar place in Louisville. All over the country, these entertainment shopping districts pop up, but they all look the same. And the plaza is unique. And I think regardless who buys the property, Kansas City has shown that there are a group of people who will stand up and defend the identity of the plaza to keep it unique. So, we may see more chains, for example, but as long as we keep it Kansas City, I think we'll be fine.
Lisa, what about these periodic disturbances on the plaza? Large teen gatherings, occasional shootings, periodically there's a near riot. Does that upset the people's view of the plaza, upset the image?
Well, I think it can, but everyone wants to see the plaza remain strong and vital, and I think overall there's still a very positive impression and positive feelings about the plaza. You can always have issues and problems crop up in any area, and there certainly have been these issues. They're trying to deal with it as best they can, but I believe that everyone in the Kansas City Metro really feels that the plaza is strong and vital.
I just want to say very quickly, you mentioned the Midtown Plaza plan that the city's doing, and I think that the city needs to be very careful about that plan, and the movement toward making this an historical landmark district could really have a cooling effect on somebody who might want to come in and buy the center.
Do you think that may be why Highwoods wants to get out of it? It says it's doing very well, it's making money.
I think it's a factor. I think that the things that you mentioned, some of the episodes that have gone on at the plaza, these people are in the office business. They're used to just renting to tenants and having it be a smooth deal. They're not used to dealing with crowd issues, that get out of control, or historical landmark efforts that will cause them to have to, they wanted to put a Tesla showroom in, and under the new rules, they're not going to be able to do that. And that's probably pretty disconcerting.
Fair to say we probably won't see significant changes when the ownership changes?
I think that's fair.
I think that's fair.
People are nodding in approval. A few weeks ago, we talked with former Kansas Democratic Party Chairman Larry Meeker on the program after he was forced to resign from the job after suggesting the state party rebrand itself. Meeker suggested a more inclusive party, one that tolerates diverse views on such volatile issues as same-sex marriage and abortion. Now, the Star's political columnist Steve Kraske says Meeker has the right idea, especially his suggestion of renaming the party Red State Democrats. Kraske notes Kansas Democrats currently hold no statewide offices, no U.S. House seats, and no U.S. Senate seats. Kraske and Meeker agree something should be done, and done soon. Lisa was the Kansas Democratic Party's nominee for the U.S. Senate in 2010, so we'll be interested in what you think about Kraske and Meeker's opinions about the state party.
Well, I agree that rebranding is absolutely needed, but it is much more complex than just a simple name change. It is an entire messaging and communication overhaul that's needed. And the core issue that needs to be dealt with is the fact that there are so many stereotypes about the label Democrat. So many people in our country, because of the media and entertainment that they take in, live in kind of a propaganda bubble where they get a lot of ridiculous notions about Democrats, like we're all anti-American socialists who want to waste everybody's money.
What's the inappropriate concept?
But that couldn't be further from the truth. It's just not the case. And so the Kansas Democrats have to find a way to break into that propaganda bubble and to have passionate messengers, not only as party leadership, but as candidates, and to have a message that really resonates with the people of Kansas and to let them know that they really want to work toward what the people of Kansas want in our state.
Lisa, what do you know about this new chairman, Lee Kinch? Yes, 76-year-old, 77-year-old Wichita lawyer.
Yes, and he has been around. He's a fixture in the party. I do know him personally.
Just the person to bring change.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how you look at it. I think he can bring change. Many people in the party are extremely comfortable with Lee, and they feel that he can provide good leadership. Now, you know, some people might argue that we could get a breath of fresh air in terms of broadening things in the leadership, but, you know, there were some concerns, and Larry Meeker chose to resign, and I'm hopeful that they can move things forward in a positive direction, but it's clear that we cannot stick and adhere to what's been done in the past.
Patrick, are Democrats in Kansas in good shape as long as Sam Brownback remains governor?
You know, they didn't even run a Senate candidate last cycle, and a national political party that doesn't run a candidate for a national political office can't be said to be healthy. But let me push back a little bit on what we just heard. The problem with the Democratic Party in Kansas, and I looked at their party platform, is not their branding or what they call them. It's the issues and the position they take: Medicaid expansion, taxes, abortion, and they can change themselves. They can change their names. They can try to engage with propaganda and the propaganda bubble, but at the end of the day, you can put lipstick on a donkey, you know, but it's still what it is.
But Patrick, I think the very thing you said is all the reason that they have an opportunity right now to appeal to the moderate Republicans who, those very things that you mentioned, they have some concerns about. The Brownback tax cuts, the attack on safety net programming for the disadvantaged, all those programs that are of concern to moderate conservatives. So what the Democratic Party needs to do in Kansas is find its way to be more collaborative with the Republican Party, and I think rebranding, remessaging is a pathway to that.
But Steve, you write about the disappearing middle in American politics. Primarily, you say moderates have disappeared from the Republican Party, but what about the Democratic Party in Kansas, where there's resistance to this type of change?
Well, in that column I mentioned that the middle has disappeared for the Democrats in the U.S. House as well as the Republicans. The moderates in the middle are being cast aside basically by those who are, I think, on the more extreme edge of the party. I think you see Bernie Sanders pushing Hillary Clinton to the left. You know, she just came out against the free trade program that she was in favor of for years and years and years. And I think the tug left is happening, and it's going to not change in the state of Kansas. The activists are going to run the party, and the activists are going to take the more left view of the Democratic Party.
But isn't Brownback a good target, though, for Democrats with the problems that he seems to have?
Well, he won.
Well, yeah.
I know he won, but
barely,
the election
barely.
coming up in 2 years.
It was a close race, and I think that, you know, that there are many people, Republicans, moderate Republicans and Democrats, who do not favor Brownback. Obviously, he did win. So he carried the state, so that speaks for itself.
But Democrats can rail against him when the elections come up next year.
They can do that, and they can, yes, they will. But they're going to get hit back with, you know, they're the Obama Democrats, and they're going to nationalize the election, and that's the way it runs.
Hillary Democrats now.
That would be the Hillary.
Okay, nationally syndicated conservative columnist Kathleen Parker is taking some of the GOP presidential contenders to the woodshed for what she considers a failure to comprehend a basic tenet of the U.S. Constitution. There shall be no religious test for any office of public trust. She cites Donald Trump for his response to a now famous question about Muslim training camps and the nationality of President Obama, and Dr. Ben Carson for his apparently inartful comments about a Muslim ever serving as president. Parker refers to her targets as the clueless, the incurious, the moronic, the dull, in short, ignoramuses. So, Patrick, is she being too harsh or too kind?
Republican primary, we've got 12 debates, we've got 30 people running for president. You know, stupid things are going to be said. And that's part of the reason why we're having so many debates. That's the part of the reason why we have so many candidates.
So more
running.
stupid things can be said?
Well, so that we can vet these candidates. And a healthy party is not afraid to good, bad, and ugly show itself. So I think, I'm not really paying attention to this cycle. You will see candidates rise to the top. We've seen some surprises drop out. We've seen some surprises sit at the top. But this is just the nature of politics, and it'll work itself out.
Now, despite the fact that many pundits and columnists are saying that these remarks are problematic, when you look at the favorability among Republican primary voters, these remarks are actually embraced in some polls by a majority of the Republican primary voters. So both Ben Carson and Donald Trump are getting a lot of traction. I watched this morning some focus groups that Mark Halperin and John Heilman did in both Iowa and New Hampshire. Both of those two are being very well received for different reasons. Carson, I think people like his softer style and his authenticity, and Trump, they feel that he is confident, bordering on arrogant, but a leader who can get things done.
Well, you mentioned a couple of weeks ago when you were on the program that pundits who dismiss Donald Trump's chances to be the nominee do so at their own peril. Do you still feel that way?
I do. It was interesting. So many people predicted the downfall of Donald Trump after the last debate. And he did have a bit of a dip, but the most recent poll numbers are showing him ticking right back up. He is a force in this primary. And I think that anyone who dismisses him does so unwisely. And Joe Scarborough made a great point yesterday on Morning Joe. He said if any establishment candidate had this many months of these kind of strong poll numbers, they'd be saying this person is going to be the nominee.
Yeah, there's been a lot of debate about no religious test for a political office, but would America elect someone who was an atheist or an agnostic? We never have, at least not to our knowledge.
No, I think...
so faith does play a role.
I think so, yes, it does. I think if you don't come from a religion that has the Judeo-Christian values, I think it's pretty much impossible to get elected in this country today. Now, 100 years from today, when the demographics completely change in this country and it's a completely different majority, something could change then. But for the foreseeable future, no, it needs to be somebody who's from a base religion.
Gwen, you getting set for the Democratic debate next week? And do you want to hope that Joe Biden is in it?
Well, I don't know. I think that would make it interesting if Joe Biden is in it. I'm looking forward to the debate. It'll be interesting to see if Hillary can improve her image right now. I think when you're looking at the polls, she's not getting a lot of favorable response in the polls as she's coming across as dishonest, and that's really, really going to be a challenge. So hopefully a debate will give her an opportunity to strengthen her position.
Well, she's been trying to change her image in recent weeks on NBC for some reason. She seems to be on almost every program airing on the network, and most recently Saturday Night Live.
Somebody referred to her campaign as kind of Hillary 16.0. I mean, there are so many different Hillarys. Part of the interest is to see which one shows up at the debate.
Yeah, but she's still leading in the polls.
Well, that's right.
At the end of the day, she's still leading. She's the front runner, so we still have to see where this is going to go, like you said about the Republican Party.
And the difference is,
now you're going to go.
The difference is the Republican Party is embracing more debates, and we hang out the good and the bad and the ugly. And the Hillary Clinton campaign especially does not want to have debates, does not want to have kind of an open discussion. They're dismissing some of the candidates. I mean, Martin O'Malley seems to me a completely worthwhile candidate, but nobody ever talks about him. So we don't have that level of transparency, and of course Hillary's problems with transparency go well beyond the campaign.
It's clear Hillary has had challenges, but one thing that's happened recently that's interesting is that Representative Kevin McCarthy gave her a huge, enormous gift. That's really going to help her rebound a bit.
Okay, got to move on. It's time now for Roast and Toast, where the Rockettes offer a high five or a low blow to people and events in the news, and we start this time with Patrick.
Well, thank you very much. My roast this week is for the Aviation Department and Kansas City government in general, who, whether it's parking passes at the airport or whether it's documentation regarding the convention hotel, simply refuse to share documents to be transparent so that we can have a legitimate policy discussion.
Gwen.
My roast this week is again for Ben Carson, who seems to provide many opportunities to be roasted on Ruckus every time he opens his mouth and puts his foot in it. His last remarks, really somewhat blaming the victims in the recent shooting at Umpqua college was just absolutely ludicrous to me. To imply that the victims should have fought back without even knowing that, yes, one of the victims did fight back and was shot 7 times trying to save not only himself but others in this horrible tragedy. Why it's just really I can't even speak about it. That Ben Carson, someone so brilliant, can make such stupid remarks.
That was a roast, right?
That was a roast.
Yeah. Lisa.
I have a toast for Kansas State Senator Jim Denning, who recently admitted what Democrats and moderate Republicans have been saying for years, that the 2012 tax plan went too far and it's not working. Governor Brownback likes to talk about the glide path to zero. Well, we're on a different glide path to $0 in the bank account. Let's hope our Kansas leaders can dispense with ideological stubbornness and move toward a tax and revenue plan that works for the state before the financial wheels come off the wagon.
Well, I'd like to toast the superintendent of the Shawnee Mission Schools, Jim Henson, and the school board. There is a great park coming to Johnson County that's going to be bigger than Luce Park. It could have been vetoed because of tax increment financing that was involved in the project. It could have been vetoed by the school board, and fortunately they came through and did not challenge it. So we will have a park that's going to be a change of lifestyle in Johnson County.
Finally, here's a toast to Rabbi Paul Silbersher, retiring after 36 years of service to the local Jewish community and to the greater Kansas City area as well. Silbersher began his Kansas City career as cantor at B'nai Yehuda, then became spiritual director at Congregation Kol Ami, and finally helped found Temple Sinai, from which he recently retired. Here's hoping Rabbi Silbersher has a long, productive, and happy retirement. Thanks again to our guests from the Producers Society at Channel 19. That is Ruckus for this week. We're back next Thursday at 7. Now, on behalf of the panel and the crew, Mike Shannon saying thanks for watching and good night.